here with Sheri Jolly, who is the owner of Dental Support Essentials. And I'm really super excited to be here with my old friend, Adrian Twig, co-owner of Bent Ericksen, a human resources company that specializes in healthcare. Welcome, Adrian.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here with you two ladies tonight and to join your audience. It's great. Thank you for the invitation.
We're excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Adrian and I go back a little ways, and I am a client of Adrian's company, and I have been very happy with Adrian's service. And the thing that we want to talk about tonight, Adrian, is this one essential element, this one thing that's needed in order for a healthcare professional or a dentist to be able to have good staff. And I've been doing dentistry for 23 years, own my own businesses for 20 years. So I know that this is no small mountain to climb, this idea of having good staff. It's what everybody wants. Yeah. Christmas is around the corner. All I want for Christmas is good staff.
Yeah, that'd be a great addition.
Yeah, but what I have found over this time period is unless you have an actual employee compliance manual, which is this one essential element that you need in order to have good staff, it makes it very difficult to actually have good staff and retain good staff. So I know, Adrian, your company makes employee compliance manuals, and I would like you to talk about that a little bit and how that actually helps healthcare professionals such as a dentist be able to have and maintain good staff.
Yeah, my first question would be, how long do we have? Because I could talk forever about the importance of having an employee manual that is compliant. And the challenge that healthcare professionals and everyone really comes into contact with is you have two set of rules that you have to make sure you're playing by. And that's the federal rules, regulation and laws, and the state laws, and many times they differ. So having a compliant employee handbook and manual is crucial not only to your employees but to you also as a small business owner. And it really does set the foundational success for your practice. It's if people don't know what the policies are and what's expected of them, then it's kind of hard to get upset with them for not following the policies and the things that you want them to do. So it really is critical as a small business owner, and that's what you are as a dental professional, and a dentist is a small business owner.
Absolutely.
So it's really crucial. Yeah, so it's really crucial that you have the policies set forth and that your employees all understand what they are and what you expect of them. And I think one of the things that our clients say is, thank goodness I'm not shooting from the hip any longer. You know, if somebody comes in and says, oh, Dr. Pasco, you know, you gave us July 4th off last year and you paid us for that. Did we get it off this year and are we being paid? And instead of you saying, let me get back to you on that, you say a 5-word magic sentence, which is, go look in the manual.
Yeah.
And it's there. It takes the pressure off of you from making that call, you know, just flying by the seat of your pants, because it's already established. And you know that it's there, and your employees and your team members know that it's there. And that is foundational to the success of your practice.
Yeah, I think when an employee feels confused or not quite certain, it leads to insecurity, which leads to underperformance, which leads to problems, which then leads to the whole concept, if I only had good staff. And I think oftentimes there's good staff right under your nose. It's just that you don't have the right things in place to be able to bring out the best in the individuals in your team. So you made a good point, Adrian. You said that different states, different regulations, things change. And, you know, my use with your company, what I really love about it is that these employee compliance manuals are actually on a cloud. It's cloud-based information, and it updates itself automatically. so that if we say, go look in the employee manual, we know that the most current and most accurate information is going to be there.
Now, I have a quick question. When it comes to the manual, is there a difference between like getting paid on the 4th of July policy and what you should do every morning when you get to work policy? Is that different between employee manual? What are the difference between those types of policies, and do you need 2 manuals?
Well, you really, when you're saying what do you do when you come to work, that's more a standard operating procedure.
Okay.
So that is totally different from your policy manual. Your policy manual is going to say, for instance, in the benefits section, it's going to list, okay, these are the 6 major holidays that we are paying for. And that's a benefit. That is not a required policy by state or federal. It is totally up to the dentist, the employer, as to whether or not that is a paid holiday or actually a day off, whether it's paid or unpaid. What you're really talking about, Sheri, is a SOP, or a standard operating procedure. And that can get very detailed from when someone greets your patient, all the way to how they are taken into the operatory and seated, to medical history, when that comes into play, how the tray setup is done. So it really details more about the actual procedure than it does about policies of how the office is run. So those are really 2 separate animals.
Would it be something where, like, when it comes to like OSHA training and HIPAA training, would it be in the SOP manual, or would it be in the manual that says you are supposed to participate in HIPAA OSHA training in the employee manual? Would that be?
You can certainly say, and for our clients, we do have things in there about staff meetings, HIPAA and OSHA meetings, and that type of thing. But the policy manual doesn't really, the policy manual doesn't really go into detail about what that is. It'll just say refer to your OSHA manual or your HIPAA manual, because those things are really, like I said, a different animal.
Okay.
So yeah.
And I know, Adrian, I know that like sort of, Sheri, like a precursor to those standard operating procedures, I know with the employee compliance manuals, there are job descriptions. And I know how important those job descriptions are. And I'd like you to talk about that, because I always had a misunderstanding on the importance of the job description and how valuable that is at every step of the employee's employment. So let's talk about that. Tell me what your thoughts on that.
It really is. And I managed a large group practice for almost 18 years there in Ohio, actually. And job descriptions, and I have hands-on experience. So, I mean, I have experienced the joy and the pain of having or not having job descriptions. But they really come into play in so many important areas that a lot of times healthcare professionals don't think about. And it's everything from when you go to hire someone and you're sitting talking with that candidate and you're giving them a copy of the job description, which outlines the tasks, the duties, the responsibilities, the experience requirements for that specific job. And it's not kind of like, okay, well, when you come in the morning, you turn the lights on and you do this. I mean, it really outlines what you expect for that job position fulfillment. And it's going to go down through, and the ones that we have for our clients, Leslie, as you're well aware, it goes down through the task, the duties, responsibilities, who they report to, whether they are exempt or non-exempt employees, what the requirements are from an educational standpoint. We include things that are considered soft skills, such as maintaining a good attitude, engendering trust, from the doctor and the patients and your coworkers. There are so many times that we get calls about, oh, well, I have an assistant and he or she does okay, they take okay x-rays, they pour up models fine, but their attitude is really gone south, and there's nothing I can do about that, right? And where our answer is no, that is absolutely not true. If you have it in your job description that they have to maintain a positive cooperative attitude, when that takes a turn for the bad, that's definitely something that you can address. And if you don't see improvement, you have your documentation in place, then that can be something that you deal with, even as far as taking it to termination. So the job description comes into play when you're looking to hire. It comes into play if you have someone going out on a medical leave or a pregnancy leave, then you have it taken, you have it for them to take it to the physician to get a sign off on whether they have to have any type of accommodation.
I've actually done that before. I've done that based off of your consultant's recommendations in different situations where somebody could come back to work and we said, well, that's great, but we need your doctor's signature and here's the job description. Your doctor has to look through all this and sign off on it. And
absolutely.
Actually, the doctor didn't sign off on it because of one particular thing, and she had to wait to come back. So that probably would, save my behind at that point.
Yeah.
Those job descriptions are so valuable. It lays the groundwork right from the beginning. And I think what you said, Sheri and I hear oftentimes, and I'm sure you do too, that, they wish the client, the dentist wishes they never hired this person. Well, if you put that job description in front of somebody and someone sees something like you must always maintain a positive attitude, or, you have to have these requirements, and if something falls short, they're not going to accept the position because they know you're organized, they know you're on top of things, they know that there's rules and guidelines right from the beginning, right? So that helps you weed out a lot of the individuals who aren't going to be a serious employee.
Or who don't like they might be a serious employee, but they might like to make their own rules.
Yeah.
They don't want to follow someone else's rules. And
there's definitely an accountability standard. Like you said, Sheri,
do you have anything? I know I have your services, but is there anything that you suggest that we use within your services because I know there's review forms and things like that. Can you talk about that accountability factor and what those services do? Because I know you guys think it's so simple. It's so simple.
Yeah. We have figured out over the years that there's basically 60 to 70 forms that you will need in your dental career. And so in our HR director package, we have those forms. So you're not having to reinvent the wheel for situations, for circumstances, for things that happen. We have a form that is used like crazy, the employee counseling memo. So if and when you need to sit and have a crucial, when you have to have one of those really crucial conversations with an employee, we are going to tell you what your real estate agent says, kind of. Your real estate agent will say location, location, location. We are going to say documentation, documentation, documentation. So one of those wildly crazy used forms is the employee counseling memo. And it literally, Leslie, as you're probably aware, is fill in the blank. So we're going to make sure that you are capturing the documentation and the information that you need if you are ever called into question about why you did a certain action with an employee, whether it's maybe you suspended them without pay and sent them home, or all the way to maybe you did terminate them. The documentation behind why you did what you did. So the counseling memo is certainly something that is widely used. We've got everything from an application to a vacation request to the counseling to performance evaluations to
time off requests.
I have a question about the soft skills. What are some of the soft skills that you think that You were talking about soft skills and the good attitude and the pleasant rapport. How
Right.
detailed do you have to be in your documentation when someone doesn't have this or isn't using a soft skill, I guess would be like, because that's something I feel like a lot of people, it's a question mark. Like a bad attitude is very subjective. So
Right.
when you have something like a soft, like what you're calling a soft skill, do you find that dentists tend to avoid things that could be subjective, or and then wait till the situation's on fire before they deal with it? And how should they deal with it?
Well, you've got different levels of dealing with attitude problems or performance problems, however you want to characterize that. You've got just kind of the verbal, you meet in the hallway and it's like, Leslie, this morning when Mrs. Johnson came in, you didn't have the exact instrument that I wanted. So next time we do this crown prep or whatever, I really need you to have this particular instrument out. And then maybe you go to your office and you make a note, talk to Leslie regarding instrumentation. And you're putting a date and a time on it. And that's really just kind of a hallway situation that it doesn't rise to any crucial level. So then maybe a couple of weeks later,
again,
Leslie.
What you're saying is even those small little things, though, you should document because you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, how many,
all
dentists out there listening, how many of you guys actually document that kind of stuff? I'm curious because I mean, I know I've had those situations and I'm a client of yours now for 3 years about, and I'm very well trained by you guys, but I've ran into situations like that. And we don't document it. So I'm learning something or relearning again from that.
So, it's really, and that's kind of a really light verbal, and if you have a couple of those conversations, then it's time to bring that team member in and sit with he or she and say, I've talked to you on a couple of occasions about this and it's not being done. And I really need you to understand how critical this is. And you've already got your counseling memo or your documentation written up. You're not doing it on the fly. It's something that you've prepared for. So the things that you want to make sure that you have included in that documentation is the date and maybe dates of other conversations that you've had. And you need to make sure that the deficiency is outlined, failure for correct instrumentation. Or maybe it's something such as they're tardy and you've talked to them a couple of times not being on time. So you've got the tardiness documented.
How about the attitude thing? Like have you seen any examples? Like how would you document an attitude thing? What would be something to say that would be more objective rather than subjective? Would that be right? Yeah.
Well, it would be maybe there has been personality clashes between your team. And the conflicts have risen to the point that, the tension is palpable in the room. And you're saying, whether it's causing tension in the team, because that's something that you're not going to be able to put a meter on it and say, okay, from 1 to 10, it's about a 5 or it's about an 8, but it's certainly a conflict that you feel. And if it's a bad attitude where maybe this let's use an assistant. I don't mean to pick on assistants, but maybe it's an assistant that, she's throwing stuff around or banging drawers or whatever, and that's something that you need to be able to outline the behavior that you are observing. And you need to be able to outline what you need the improvement to be. Maybe it's that she is more prepared when you come into the room with the tray or having the patient taken care of as far as medical histories or whatever the procedure may be, that you're seeing the detriment and the deficiency in the job performance. So you need to be able to outline that. You need to be able to outline what you expect the improvement to be, and you need to set a timeline on when you want to see that improvement. Maybe it's immediately. Maybe if it's an incident like being late, you're saying, this can't happen again. And then you need to be able to outline what the consequences will be. Let's take, for example, if it's someone being tardy, then the next time it happens, you're going to send them home without pay for the day. Or the next time it happens, maybe it's risen to the level that you say it's affecting patient flow, it's affecting teamwork, and if you can't be here on time, I'm going to have to help you to the door, and you're going to have to find another place to work.
Yes,
so you just need to be really clear.
Yeah, that's laying out all those expectations during these conversations. And what I'm hearing you say, Adrian, and I think what the listeners should be hearing as well, especially listeners who are employees, and I'm not trying to be picky, but what I want to say is, like, attitude matters. And attitude is part of your job performance. And I have said this for years in my office, when your hand touches that door, it's show on. It's, you have to leave your problems, your hangover, your situations, whatever it is. I mean, really, come on, sometimes we run into this stuff and it's completely unprofessional. We're in healthcare. You need to leave that stuff at the door, because attitude is part of your job performance. And if you come in with a poor attitude, if you give, each other within the workspace, lip, and you create discord, then you're going to be penalized, because that is considered part of your job performance. But then let's talk about that a little bit, because that comes down to leadership and employee engagement, which is something that we have also had a conversation about, and where that leadership and employee engagement actually comes from, and who is the leader in the office. In a dental office, who is the leader? It's the dentist.
Yeah, absolutely. It starts from the top down. You can't expect anything of your employees that you're not willing to engage and display yourself. And nowadays we hear a lot, the job market is tight. And we hear a lot, I can't find good people, or I can't keep good people. And I mean, it's a common refrain that we're hearing. And our first question is, well, okay, so let's talk about yourself and your leadership. Are you someone that you would want to work for? If as the boss and the leader, you hit the door every morning with going, oh gosh, I have to be here again today. It's kind of hard for you to expect your team to be really revved up about being there as well. So that's really going to stop and start with you as the leader. But we were just having a conversation today about employee engagement and what that all entails. And it's not just, I'm the boss and you're going to be happy because I say you are. It's one of our coworkers has a sign in his office and it says, the beatings will continue until morale improves. Okay. That's kind of counterintuitive there. So providing an atmosphere where people feel valued, where they feel appreciated and acknowledged for their contribution. The number one thing for people moving around today in their job situation is most people think it's because of their pay. Like they can go down the street for Dr. Smith, who gives them a nickel more an hour, and a lot of doctors will think, oh, well, that's why they left. Well, when the surveys are done and compiled, it's because the employees don't feel appreciated, they don't feel valued, and they don't feel like their contribution is being acknowledged. Or there's things going on within the team that maybe they're not being addressed. They're not being addressed fairly and consistently across the board. So if a team member sees, well, so-and-so gets to come in late and nothing is ever done about that, but I'm here every day on time, ready to roll, and that's never acknowledged, or I don't feel appreciated or valued for that. well, it's not going to take long for the fallout to start hitting on things like that. And there again, that's where having a policy manual that is consistently applied across the board is so crucial and so important, so that everybody is being treated the same. You don't have any discrimination issues there. Everybody's being treated the same, and they all know what the rules and what the policies are. So it's kind of that big circle, and it just kind of keeps coming round and round and round.
Back to that policy manual, that is the one essential element to having and maintaining good staff. And leadership is definitely connected. And I know Sheri and I talk with dentists all the time, and I know you do too, Adrian. Do you have any, like one quick tip? Maybe we could each share one quick leadership tip that the doctors could put right in their practice tomorrow morning to start being a more effective leader. What would you say your tip would be, Adrian?
I think my big mantra, and I have used this for years and years and years, is what you accept, you teach. So if you have an employee that is out of bounds, that is doing something that you don't like, that it's kind of gnawing at you, but you don't really want to address it, and you're avoiding it, and you're just thinking, oh, well, that's just her, or that's just him, whatever. You are teaching them to behave that way. So regardless of what you have set aside in your policy manual or whatever, if you accept a certain type of behavior, then that's the behavior you're teaching.
Yeah, that's an excellent tip. That's a tip right across the board, whether it's in business or in personal life. That tip applies.
Absolutely.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's awesome. Sheri, what about your one tip, leadership tip for the doctors out there? What would you say from your observation?
Well, for my observation, they don't lay out the expectations of, I can see that sometimes the expectations not being laid out ahead of time can be a stumbling block. So laying it out clearly at the beginning with something like a manual, and then everybody knows, there's no question. I think sometimes small practices tend to make things up on the fly, new practices, startup practices, and then all of a sudden, and actually I am guilty of this as a small business owner. I started out with one employee. And then I got 2 employees and 3 employees, and those employees knew me personally, and they were like gung-ho to build this business. Then I got to the 10 employee mark, and all of a sudden they didn't buy in like everybody. That it was more of a job, and I had to go backwards and write policies and make everybody sign the policy. This is what's expected of you. But had I just had a manual when I had the one employee, I wouldn't have had to do that. And so that's a lesson I've learned the hard and expensive way, that have it written down, the expectations, before you start the work. It goes back.
Yeah, back to that employee manual. And I think what you're saying, Sheri, is that a good leader will actually take a look at what their expectations are. Like, how many dentists out there are you guys really looking at what you expect? Are you really looking at your expectations? And then not only that, but are you documenting them and taking responsibility for your team so that they can be an effective team member? I know for me, the one leadership tip that I have is, it's the small things that really count. These small acknowledgments, like, hey, you did a really great job, or hey, that patient was really difficult, but you handled them really well. Or, I noticed that you went out of your way and I really appreciate that. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And those small little acknowledgments, they don't have to be big things. You don't have to buy them lunch every week, and you don't have to do these big, shows of appreciation. It's just those small things that they really appreciate, and using good manners when you're working with your staff and saying please and thank you.
Absolutely.
That's really critical. And it just shows, the grace and poise that someone has as a leader. And not only do the team members appreciate it, but the patients notice it and appreciate it too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
and I think that's an excellent point, Leslie. And when you were talking about acknowledging them for the small things or whatever, we have found that the more specific you can be, is great. Like you gave the example, that Mrs. Smith was really, difficult this morning, and you handled that wonderfully. That's huge.
yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, it really is. So I guess the message is here so far, what we're looking at is, the one essential element to having and keeping good staff is you have to create them. They don't just appear. I mean, they do appear, but you have to continue to create on it, and you have to continue to grow and evolve them. You have to show them appreciation and give them rules and guidelines so that they know how to play the game and play it right, and they're not falling outside of the boundaries and making errors and things that could put them at risk for not being a good employee. And so then I guess that leaves, the last subject, the very detailed subject of, human resources and human resources in healthcare. So Adrian, can you tell us what is something that is most misunderstood in the human resources area of healthcare?
I think it's probably classification of an employee, because a lot of doctors will think, oh, if I put my office manager on salary, then if she works more than 40 hours a week, I don't have to pay her overtime. And that has nothing to do with overtime pay, whether it's their hourly or salary or day rate or whatever. It goes into wage and hour laws and issues of whether they are considered an exempt employee or a non-exempt employee. And so that, well, a non-exempt employee is basically 98% of all dental office employees. You're going to have a very small amount of employees that will be considered exempt, which means the government has a very strict criteria for who can be considered exempt. And it's usually a learned professional, such as an attorney, an accountant, an IT person, a salesperson. They have to have some input on financial decisions, really how it affects the practice. They have to have a supervisory role. They have to supervise at least 2 people or more. So there's a certain criteria. They have to be able to hire and fire. And the government has put this into place. And just because you consider someone an office manager does not mean that they meet that criteria. Now, certainly if you have an administrator, someone who's signing checks, someone who's doing your P&L, someone who is doing the hiring and firing of the practice, then maybe they would pass that test. But the fallacy out there and the myth out there, and I have no idea how or where it started, was by just giving somebody the title of a manager, then that automatically makes them outside the limits of having to pay overtime. And the government, especially in the last few years, I would say, really is beginning to clamp down on that more and more. And if and when an audit by something is triggered, they're going to look to see if you've got anybody that you're considering exempt, and they're going to see if they really qualify. And there's a pretty stiff penalty for not paying correctly, not paying wage and hour issues correctly. So
the exempt is the salary, and it can be abused by having somebody work more than the full-time, what's considered full-time hours. What is considered full-time hours? 40, or is it?
It depends on what you set. There is no federal or state law. So if you see patients 4 days a week and maybe 36 hours is what you consider full-time. So it's really whatever you determine. We've got some offices that are 30 hours a week, and that's all that they are open and have patient hours. So you really determine your own hours for that.
Okay, so
Where overtime kicks in, that is something that's regulated, and overtime will kick in at anything over 40 hours a week.
Okay.
But if you say 30 hours a week is considered a full-time employee, anything less than 30 hours a week is part-time, that's completely up to your discretion.
And that goes back to that employee manual. That's what would be laid out in there.
If someone works a 12-hour day, they don't have to get overtime?
Not in the state of Ohio. In the state of California, which is brutal to be an employer, anything over 8 hours a day is considered overtime. Okay. And I think there's maybe 3 or 4 more states. I know Colorado has something similar to that. But in Ohio and the Michigan, Kentucky, surrounding states, it's 40 hours per week, and that's not per pay period. A lot of offices will say, oh, well, we only pay every other week, so it's really 80 hours per pay period, and maybe somebody worked 42 hours the first week, but they only worked 38 the next week, so that equals out to 80 hours. So we're good, right? No, it's 40 hours a week.
Okay, so well, that's interesting. That's interesting to know, because I didn't know that. I know that I do know it varies by state. So that's another question I have. Do you walk them through those types of things when you're setting them up? How much time do you spend walking a doctor through there? Because I was just thinking about, you were talking about the soft skills and addressing soft skills, and then I was thinking, well, if I was a new dentist, I might need somebody to just tell me how to do it. Do you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we do. We have a whole startup program that we do, and we have telephone support that is incredible. So if and when a dentist or one of our clients has a question about, oh, this is happening in the practice, and what do I do with this? When it's employee related, then they give us a call, and we set an appointment up with them to speak with one of our HR specialists that will walk them through. Okay, tell me the situation, and of course the specialist will ask questions and all that type of thing, and then advise them along the way how to deal with it, how to handle it. So yes, definitely.
So before we finish up here, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but wanted to know, what was one thing that your program did in an office that you didn't expect? Like, what positive thing or what change came about? I mean, I know that you kind of know what to expect, but have you ever implemented an HR program into an office and it actually brought out a change you weren't expecting?
Well, we always hope for the best when we go in. But I think the increase to some of our clients' bottom line is because when they implement a policy manual and they have it in place and everybody knows what's going on and they know what the expectations are, then they feel more secure, they perform better, which leads to better patient satisfaction. And let's face it, just not having to continually hire a new team member improves the morale overall, because when you're down a team member and you're going through the rehiring process, everybody has to pull more of the weight. So I think, it's not a surprise because we kind of expect it, but it's always very, very satisfying for us, for our clients to say, our production has gone up, our collections have gone up, our bottom line is better because our team is more intact and more together.
And that's a link that a lot of people don't always make, that the happy team makes a productive team, which makes an efficient team, which makes a profitable practice.
Absolutely. So I think that's one of the absolute joys of our business, is being able to help the dentist realize an increase to their bottom line because their team is functioning on all cylinders.
That's really great. Well, I really thank you for coming, and I know I talk to dentists on a regular basis. I come in and usually clean up a lot of accounts receivable, and one of the common issues with an accounts receivable problem is too much turnover. And so that's one of the things that I see on a regular basis. So I think it was very interesting for almost all the dentists. Everybody always asks us about staff and what's the best way to handle staff, how do I hire good people, and how do I become a good boss. So thank you so much for joining us today. It looks like
my pleasure.
Dr. Pasco's power went out. She just texted me, and so she's dropped out, but we're still here. So this is Adrian from Bent Ericksen. You can look them up online, and you can join on the cloud, right? You can join Bent Ericksen on the cloud. It's actually quite affordable, and it's very easy. It's very user friendly, and
Absolutely.
then and it will solve a lot of your issues. It's one of those things, if you take the time to do it now, it will save you heartburn later on.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you for the invitation to be here. I've enjoyed it, and I'm sure I'll catch up with Leslie later. But if I can help you guys or any of your clients in any way, please let me know. It's a great service, and I'd be happy to do it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll probably talk again.
Great. Thanks, Sheri.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.